Welcome to the Week 15 Fantasy Flex Podcast presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, joined as always by my dude, Sean Koerner. Sean, as we're recording this, I hope like half the week doesn't go on the COVID list because that's what it seems like every time we record this late in the year this time.
Yeah, it's getting pretty bonkers right now. I'm trying to not leave my spread, trying to not leave more than 5 feet away from my spreadsheet. Seems like I'm updating projections constantly, but yeah, this is getting out of control. Hopefully they can come up with something to kind of remedy this, but it's tough right now. It's just spreading like wildfire. Only so much we could do. But yeah, it's only gonna, I predicted a week ago to you that it was gonna get pretty bad, and I think it's unfortunately still going to get worse. So I think we're going to still, we're going to see a ton of guys ruled out this week, unfortunately.
Over under 0.5 NFL games moved to Tuesday or Wednesday.
Are we going to go back on that now? Oh man, yeah, I could definitely see that happening. I'd say that's a good line. It's probably 50-50 at this point. I know that the Browns are in a rough position, right? They might not have any receivers or tight ends.
And they're the Browns.
I thought they have a rule though, like if you can't field the team, you have to forfeit or something. So I don't think we're going to see any games moved. I think they do have a rule in place, right?
Yeah,
that kind of prevents that.
Imagine if the Browns of all teams, like the bad luck Browns, ended up being the first team to forfeit in like at least half a century, if not more.
Yeah, I think they're just gonna do what they did last year, where they had like Jamarcus Bradley, and I forgot who else they had lined up at receiver. That was a fun game to project. We had three or four practice squad guys start, and Baker had one of his best games of the season. Go figure, passing yards wise. So
yeah, if I was the NFL team, and you see this anyway, kind of. I don't know if it's for that purpose, but if I'm an NFL team, I'm probably. It's like you almost want to release like some of your like lesser known practice squad guys rather than have them on the roster. That way, if you do have a COVID outbreak, at least you can like re-sign them, like guys that you think would have passed through waivers anyway, or I guess they have to pass through waivers, right, to get released. So like, yeah, like that's kind of the only way to go. Cause I mean, even these practice squad guys, I think they practice with the team, so they're at risk too. So it's
these position groups, it's something. Yeah, I wonder if these next couple weeks, if we're going to see another Kendall Hinton situation where there's no functioning quarterback and they have to start some guy that quarterbacked one game in high school, so he's a starting quarterback. But it's nuts. And yeah, we're almost done with this season, but I think unfortunately these next few weeks are going to be pretty rough.
Yeah, so we'll talk through it for the main slate. We will also break down the Thursday night showdown slate, and let's actually jump right into that. We have the Chiefs, we have the Chargers. Keenan Allen activated from the COVID list, so the Chargers should be closer to full health. I know Eckler's a little bit banged up. It is a short week, but it doesn't look like he's going to miss the game. For the Chiefs, Josh Gordon got placed on the COVID list, so maybe that cuts down a little bit the amount of the receivers we have to project, which one is going to kind of go off or at least get the most routes. It's been Pringle as of late. But who do you like in the captain spot here?
Well, it always goes without saying, if Tyreek Hill is on a slate, he has the highest ceiling, but you've pointed out that, he has a much lower floor this year, or he's hitting his floor more often this year. So by no means is he an automatic play in the captain slot. So similar to last night where I said, James Conner was a good pivot play against the Cardinals passing offense. I do like playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the captain slot here. If, if the Chiefs take a big lead, it's a positive game script. It could set up Edwards-Helaire for a big game. He rushed for 100 yards against the Chargers back in week 3, I think it was. The Chargers, they're a run funnel defense. So I think he makes sense sort of as a leverage play, at least in the captain slot. And then on the Chargers side, I think Keenan Allen makes a lot of sense. It looks like Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and Jared Cook were held out of practice yesterday, and it's a short week. So with all three of those guys banged up, they could lean on Keenan Allen even more, if it's even possible. So he has 10 catch upside for this game. So a full PPR site like DK, I think it does make sense to kind of consider a guy like Keenan Allen in the captain slot, just given all the injuries. Again, we'll have a better idea come Thursday, but right now I'm thinking Keenan Allen on the Chargers side.
Yeah, I love Keenan Allen every week. I mean, he's like a lock-in cash play for me, so I like that. I would consider Mike Williams if he suits
Mhm.
up. I mean, he went 7 for 122 with 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs in the first matchup, so they haven't really had an answer for him yet. So I'm willing to kind of test the waters there. What about for DFS cheat codes?
Well, I think, Byron Pringle, his routes run looked great. Last week it was 70%. So he's pretty much the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver in this offense, but he's only posted, one catch for 14 yards 2 weeks ago, one catch for 20 yards last week. So he hasn't really been hitting, but I think that's a good thing because his rostership should be held in check because of that. But, just being the number 2 receiver in this offense means he has a good amount of upside. It looks like Josh Gordon's on the COVID list, so maybe Pringle sees a little bit more playing time because of that. But either way, I think Pringle is probably the cheat code for me on the Chiefs side. And then the Chargers side, I think both Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton are no-brainer cheat codes for me. I think either one of those guys can kind of break this slate on a single catch. They're sort of those big play threat guys. So if, Eckler, Mike Williams, and Cook are banged up, they could lean on these ancillary receivers a bit more. And we saw them both have great games last week. So I like taking a stab on, Palmer or Guyton here.
Yeah. On the Chiefs side for me, it's Garrett Gore. He's been kind of mixing in randomly. It's Thursday. It's a primetime slate, which seems like a Derek Gore type of slate here. And it's like the pivot off the pivot of Edwards-Helaire, because I like him. Obviously, this Chargers run defense has struggled all season. But if the Chiefs do build a big lead and things, like game script wise, if they build it early, I mean, you could see some Derek Gore. That's kind of what we've seen in the past. If the Chiefs get big really early, as they did against the Raiders, just a lot of extended garbage time. So I like him. Even a guy like, Demarcus Robinson, he's at 1,800. He had no catches last game, so I think you're a week early. But that's the thing. He usually kind of alternates, right? Like it's like one game he's like not part of the game plan at all. The next game he might get a couple targets in like the first quarter. So I think this is kind of the time where, especially with Gordon out, I think Robinson is the guy who probably picks up most of those routes at this point, because McCole Hardman's been doghoused, it seems like. So he's he's struggling to run more than a third or play more than a third of the snaps these days, which it's weird, but because he's also not returning kicks, so it's weird. But I think Robinson is in play. And on the Chargers side, I mean, really have to see what's going on with the injury report to make any kind of final decisions. Number one, you just have to see which running backs are active for them, because they always switch it up. But I think whoever, whether it be Justin Jackson, Roundtree, if he's active, Kelly, like two of those 3 guys, I would play in this spot, because the Chiefs still have been struggling in run defense. Eckler's a little banged up, and it's a short week. And we did see the Chargers kind of mixing in their backup running backs against the Giants as well. So I think that, this slate could be broken by a lot of different guys here. The backup running backs on both teams for me, just because you got 2 bad run defenses in this spot. And it has been kind of a crapshoot with these Chiefs receivers. I will admit, it's like, Pringles run their most routes, like you said, and it's just nothing. Robinson was doing it, nothing. So, and it's because Mahomes isn't throwing for like 400 every game. That's really what it is. Like, it's like now he's like a normal quarterback again in terms of the numbers. So I'm going to try to play a bunch of different running backs and see how it goes there.
Makes sense. And thanks for reminding me about Demarcus Robinson. He had those 2 catches. I think it was like the first drive of the game.
Hasn't had any since.
To squash my under 1.5 receptions. And he's gone, I think it's 117 minutes now without a catch. So it's always nice to be on the right side of something, even though you lost. But and then I think he had 0 catches the game before. So he has a very, very low floor. But I agree with you. He's those kind of guys that can break a slate like this. All it takes is 1 catch. So I can get behind with Robinson as, just a high upside kind of flyer for this slate. Any of these like ancillary receivers for the Chiefs for that matter. But I do like kind of taking a stab on like a Justin Jackson type as well, because, this Chargers running back rotation behind Eckler has been kind of messy all season, but lately it's definitely been Justin Jackson. He is the clear backup. So I do like the idea of taking a flyer on him, because if Eckler's banged up in any way, we could see Justin Jackson get 10 plus touches in this game. So I like getting Jackson some lineups as well.
We are aware there is a Saturday slate this week. We'll talk about that on the Friday show. Number one, because I don't want to add any more time to this pod. It's already a pretty jam-packed pod with, talking main slate and everything. Number two, there's just a lot of COVID news going on with the Cleveland Browns, who are on that Saturday slate. So we want to kind of be as close to the game as possible to give you the most actionable content. So we'll talk about that on the Friday episode of the Fantasy Flex. But let's get into the main slate here. And let's start with quarterback. Sean, top 5 ranked quarterbacks heading into week 15.
Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, although I probably have Brady too low, and then Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert.
Mine's a little different here. So Allen is day-to-day with an injury. I'm sure you're aware. So that kind of worries me against the defense that I do have some respect for in Carolina. I know Atlanta beat him and whatnot. I mean, that was much to do with their own offense as Atlanta's offense. But I don't have Allen in my top 5 as of now because I'm docking him a little bit. I'm just worried about, how he's going to move with his, with his rushing if he's, what is it, his toe or something? What?
Yeah, it's his toe.
Right. Yeah. So that worries me because he's averaging 6.8 yards per pass attempt this year. He's not the same Josh Allen that he was last year, throwing for like 300 and averaging, a healthy number of yards per attempt. So a toe injury worries me because then he becomes kind of like a little more of a sitting duck in the pocket. But Carolina has the defenders to kind of man up on even a team like Buffalo that can go 4 wide. So I'm a little worried about Allen to start the week. He's out of my top 5. I do have Kyler Murray at the top spot, Brady number 2. That may switch because, like you said, any spot below 1 for Brady seems a little too low.
Yeah.
Like, for real, though. Like, it's not even like we're joking, but we're not really joking. Like,
no,
it's just
I'm
torching everyone.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes, still number 3. Matthew Stafford, number 4 against Seattle. And then Justin Herbert in that number 5 spot. Obviously pending the health of all his pass catchers, as you mentioned. If he's going to be without a couple of those guys, he may drop a spot or 2, and then that would put Rodgers for me into that number 5 spot. So
yeah, I was wondering where you had Rodgers. Right now he's my QB 8, but it seems like the worse his toe gets, the better he actually gets in the box score. Yeah. Which has been interesting.
He's but this is his Ben Roethlisberger stage of his career where he's just like he wants his flowers, so he's like gonna just tell you he has all kinds of injuries. Like now Ben Roethlisberger is past that. This is like Roethlisberger when he was like in his like early 30s. But now like this is Rodgers. It's like my toe hurts. It hurts even worse after I threw 4 touchdowns. Oh no, I mean I'll throw 5 next time. Like like
seriously.
And Baltimore's a pass funnel. Like they are one of the best run defenses in the NFL. They're number 4 in DVOA against the run, 26th against the pass. So that is the definition of a pass funnel. Should be a good day for Rodgers and Adams and company. All right. DFS cheat codes, top plays, guys, you're higher on than the consensus on this main slate for week 15.
I mean, we kind of talked through some of the concerns we have for the top tier guys. I think Dak Prescott at 6,500 is probably the best bet if you're going to spend up at QB because, Tony Pollard and Zeke are banged up right now. So despite, being double-digit favorites on the road against the Giants, they could lean on Dak in the passing game pretty much the entire game. So I like Dak's floor and ceiling this week. So I think he's cash game and GPP viable. If they land on the pass game even more here. I think Tua is a no-brainer at 5,700. We talked about him on the waivers pod yesterday, but against the Jets, you couldn't ask for an easier matchup, and their running back depth chart has been hit hard by COVID. So we don't even know who's going to be available for them in the backfield. So they could just lean on Tua even more here. And I think, getting Devontae Parker back helps raise Tua's ceiling considerably, I think. And I think after the bye week, Parker should be closer to 100%. So he has Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, and Mike Gesicki at his disposal. So I think he should be able to light up this Jets defense. And then I'm going to get really disgusting here and say Trevor Lawrence at 5,100 against the Texans. It's really hard to take Trevor Lawrence right now. He's looked really bad this year, and I think a lot of that blame could be put on Urban Meyer. But Lawrence really hasn't looked great at all this year. But at 5,100 in a game, I mean, this is the toilet bowl of all toilet bowls against the Texans. He does have rushing upside. He could have a ceiling game here, so I might have a couple shares of Trevor Lawrence at pretty much min price. So even though it's disgusting, I do think Lawrence is a sneaky play this week.
I can't believe you just picked the wrong quarterback in this game.
Oh no,
it's got to be Davis Mills. I mean, come on. First of all, over his last 2 games, Mills is completing over 71% of his passes. He's got 310 and 331 yards, so he's averaging 321 yards per game over the last 2. Yeah, in his last 5 starts, over 20 fantasy points 3 times. Still 5,400. But most of all, you kind of mentioned it. It is the toilet bowl. Both of these quarterbacks are bad. Both of these teams are bad. But Mills facing a pass funnel Jags defense, 31st in pass defense DVOA, but 13th against the run. Houston, they are a run funnel. They're 8th against the pass in DVOA and 28th against the run. So good luck with Trevor Lawrence against the top 10 pass defense. Even though they did lose Grugier Hill, and I think they lost a couple guys in their secondary. So we'll have to see, the injury report heading into the week. But this has been a top 8 pass defense. So yeah, I think it's all about Davis Mills in this spot. Like I think the Texans win this game, and I think it's on the back of Davis Mills.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to complain about that. I think Brandon Cooks and even Brevin Jordan are great plays this week. So I'm kind of buying in on Davis Mills. But I do like Trevor Lawrence's rushing upside. He at least has rushing upside. Mills, of course, only has rushing upside when I have the under 5.5 rushing yard prop.
I think you're just salty. I think you're just salty about Davis Mills. You're picking the wrong quarterback in this game.
I guarantee you, I'm still salty about. I admit that, but I'm investing in Davis Mills through Brandon Cooks for sure this week. So I'm not completely off Mills.
I like the cheap stack though. So it's like with Lawrence, I guess you can go Treadwell. So you got an option there, but. Yeah,
I think this game has sneaky upside, right?
It's gonna be like 9-3.
It's gonna be a shit show.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh god.
But no, yeah, like I can't. It's kind of a weird slate for quarterback. Like even a guy like Dak, it's like I liked him last week. He was facing a bad defense, and just it's been weird up and down with Dak ever since he came back from that injury. It hasn't been as crisp. So another guy that's kind of in that same range. A little cheaper in the 6,000s is Joe Burrow. I like him in this spot against Denver. I don't think he's going to be too popular, coming off the finger injury. And but the thing about it that caught my eye is that Denver plays man coverage at the highest rate in the league. And the Cincinnati Bengals average the most yards per attempt against man coverage. They're at 11.3. Compared to 8.6 against zone. So, I mean, you could always see, the team switch their schemes up. I'm sure they know this too. But, it is a great matchup for Burrow here. And, if he gets man coverage with any of those receivers, really, even CJ Usoma, that's been his specialty as a tight end, has been beating man coverage, which, is odd. Most tight ends, they're going to play better against zone. Usoma, like when he's singled up, he makes big plays. So, I think Joe Burrow is a really sneaky play as well. And then Tua, just got to mention him again. I mean, I have him as a top 10 quarterback this week. Yep. He's under 6K, so love him as well.
How about you said that you have Stafford at QB4, which is a little bit higher than me. How about him at 7K? Because you correctly mentioned, I'm worried about Josh Allen, his toe injury. Right now, I have him projected for 4 carries for like 20 yards, which is really low projection for him, but that could go down. Yep. Kyler's maybe too expensive, and which should be a blowout. So, like, does Stafford stick out at 7K, or are you worried about Odell possibly missing?
I like Stafford. I like him in tournaments, but at 7K in terms of like cash games, I wouldn't really want to go there. Like, I think I would rather just take the value with like a Tua. Yep. Jimmy Garoppolo is another guy. Like I don't know if I would play him in cash. I think I would rather play Tua just because he's been a little more consistent. But Garoppolo in that same price range. So it's tough in terms of the pricing this week. Rodgers at 75. I think that's pretty correct. Stafford is correct. Dak is kind of like he looks like a value, but he's priced correct, given his recent play. I think Burrow, given his finger injury, he's probably priced correct. So yeah, it's tough in that above 6K. So I don't hate it, but in cash games, I'd probably still rather go a different direction.
There's a lot of good sub, or like you said, Burrow's probably the cutoff, but guys 6,100 or below seem like really good plays this week. So I think it's a slate so far right now where I'm probably gonna be spending down at quarterback.
Yeah, and then Tyler Huntley, we didn't mention him. Yeah. If Lamar misses, I think he's in play just because of his rushing ability. And he's, that's why, Mills, Huntley, those guys in that range, you mentioned Lawrence, probably going to have to play those guys in tournaments quite a bit because don't know where we are with Cam Newton and PJ Walker, and then Jalen Hurts and Gardner. Like there's all these question marks, and Taysom Hill's off the slate. So all of our like normal rushing quarterback cheat codes are kind of off. Justin Fields is off the slate as well. So there's like we need some cheap value here, and there is a incentive I think to spend down, and the guys in the top tier the value isn't great. And Josh Allen, he's the most expensive too. So that even if he does get cleared, it's going to be tough to justify him as anything other than like a pay up to be contrarian kind of situation. All right. Who's our prop for quarterback?
So you just mentioned him. He doesn't play till Sunday night, so we didn't get to, talk about him too much, but he is the hardest player to project this week, in my opinion. So it's Taysom Hill, specifically his rushing yards. I'm just curious how you're projecting him in general. This is going to be a completely different game script as last week where he got to just run and they're able to beat the Jets. Where are you projecting his rushing usage here? And it's a tough matchup. Like I have the line set at 51.5. Are you over or under that?
I'm slightly under that because I have his mean at 52. So I have his median at around 48.5. So I'm slightly under, but I think that's a good line. I think it's going to be somewhere around 50. He's just like, he's going to get his rushing even against that Tampa Bay front because he's just going to get design runs. He might have to scramble a bit. They'll drop back into some zone coverage. So it won't be easy, but I just think that like, that's part of what you're doing when you're starting Taysom Hill, like regardless of the matchup, there's going to be some plays where he just gets the ball on a keeper and he's just going to go straight ahead. And maybe they only get like 2-3 yards per run, but I think you have to expect him to kind of approach double-digit carries every time he starts. So.
Do you think there's any chance that like they're down by 10 plus points and they bring in Trevor Siemian for a more pass-heavy approach, or is Siemian just not even good enough to warrant that?
After what we saw out of Siemian, beyond that first start against Tampa Bay, maybe only because it's Tampa Bay and he did play well against them, maybe I would say. But if it was almost any other team, I would probably say no, just because we know that Sean Payton always kind of liked Taysom anyway. And like now that you have Taysom practicing as a starter, you're kind of taking him away from that special teams role. You're taking him away from that receiving role. So I just don't know that the incentive is there for Payton, especially after Siemian kind of face planted for multiple straight weeks in a row.
Right.
I still think he's going to look at it as if Taysom gives him the most upside, whether it be legs or whatever, just kind of confusion. So yeah, I think the chances are low, but maybe not. It's a non-zero chance only because Siemian did have that game against the Bucs.
Yeah, and just because I'm still worried about Hill's finger injury. It's the middle finger on his throwing hand, so it could pose a problem. I just think this is one of those weeks where Hill probably has the lowest floor he's ever had, but he always seems to exceed expectations. So he's still right in my top 10, right outside my top 10. He's my QB 11. Just I think his floor is a bit lower this week.
Yeah, I have him at QB 10. I have him ahead of Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo. So right behind Tua. So it's and he could move up one spot if Josh Allen gets ruled out. Everyone moves up. Because I have Allen 7 right now, knocking him down for that injury.
Wonder where Trubisky would rank in that situation.
Hey, he was good in the preseason.
Yeah,
right?
He might be a sneaky streamer option if Allen's ruled out. Not gonna lie.
I'm not messing with this Carolina. I look at it and it's a little inconsistent, but scary defense for a backup to go against. All right, let's go to running back. Top 5 for week 15.
So I have Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, and Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, I have Taylor, Cook, Chubb, Fournette, and Najee Harris. Eckler, again, just because of the short week and a little bit of uncertainty with his health, knocking him down a couple of spots right out of that top 5. If we get news that he's like good to go and they're just kind of, preserving him last game and it's not that serious, he probably moves back into my top 5. But as of right now, yeah, he's just a spot. Let me see where I have him. Yeah, he's my RB7 after Kamara, who's at 6. And Kamara's really only getting knocked down because of the matchup and the possibility that Mark Ingram returns. If Mark Ingram is not back off the COVID list, even in the tough matchup, I could see Kamara perhaps jumping Harris and Fournette. DFS cheat codes at running back. Who do you like?
So the first guy that stood out for me is Devonta Freeman, actually, at 5,500. The past 5 games, he's essentially turned into the workhorse back for the Ravens. He's dominating rush attempts and the usage in the passing game. So, we're on back-to-back games now with 5 receptions. So he's game script proof. And in a matchup against the Packers where we don't know if Lamar is going to play or not, they could be trailing for much of this game. So I think Freeman's kind of sneaky at 5,500. Don't think he's going to be highly rostered at all. He's not a sexy play. So I like Freeman at that price. And then I'm going to have to stick with Antonio Gibson this week. He's still 6K. He had a dud last week. I mean, the whole football team offense kind of sputtered and Heineke got hurt. So, if Heineke's ruled out, I'll probably pivot away from Gibson. But right now at 6K, I'm going to stick with him. Even if JD McKissic returns, I don't think it's going to impact Gibson's underlying usage too much if he returns. So love Gibson. And then back to the toilet bowl. Love me some James Robinson at 5,400. There's been some confusion, what they're doing with him and all this stuff, but this is a matchup where they can lean on him. It's a good matchup. So I'm going to stick with him. I don't know if Brandon Linder is going to return this week. He was out last week. So I don't know if his absence was kind of like the reason the Jaguars offense collapsed, among other things, of course, but Robinson looked really bad last week. So I think he bounces back here, like him at this price. And then just the sneaky flyer for DK for me this week is Amir Abdullah at 4,400 because, he ran a 60% routes run rate last week. He's the main pass catching back. So the Christian McCaffrey role in that regard. And this is a matchup where the Panthers could be down 10 plus points for most of the game. So Abdullah could rack up those receptions. So a full PPR set like DK, I like having a flyer in Abdullah, just given the potential game script here.
Yeah, this doesn't set up as a Chuba Hubbard game, unless Josh Allen is ruled out, because then the Panthers could just, probably go 2 tight ends and just do what they want to do, which is run the football. But yeah, there's not too much to add here. It's actually a pretty tough week value wise, I think, on the main slate at running back. A couple of guys I'll mention. Deontay Foreman still leading that backfield in Tennessee. That's a matchup against Pittsburgh where I think both teams probably will want to run the ball a good amount. So, he's been leading that backfield. Pittsburgh's given up, they're bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to running backs. So I like him even with McNichols back. I still think he's going to be their goal line back and they're the guy that gets the most carries. And then another one to watch. Rashad Penny, I think, at that price, I'm kind of coming around to him just because I think the Seahawks, they're saying he's going to be the lead back. The Seahawks, they're going to want to run the ball. And the Rams the one thing about the Rams is they do kind of concede the run. I mean, we saw James Conner, even in a game the Rams were controlling for most of it, still have a monster game. Now, Rashad Penny is no James Conner, obviously. But, the Seahawks, if you give the Seahawks the run, they'll take it, is what I'm kind of getting at here. So I think Penny on a tough slate is worth consideration here. And then one to monitor is David Johnson. He's at 4,900. Looks like Rex Burkhead is going to miss this week. They're calling him day to day, but from what I hear, it's an uphill battle for him to play. Royce Freeman was very ineffective, averaging 1.4 yards per carry, in extended action last week. So I think that if Johnson is active along with Freeman as the 2 backs, I think Johnson will dominate that workload, probably 2-1, if not more, over Royce Freeman. So like Johnson, if Rex Burkhead sits.
Yeah, you mentioned this is a tough slate at running back. I couldn't agree more. All of my top 5 are off the slate. So
great.
Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Leonard Fournette, even although he's not really top 5 right now, Alvin Kamara is not on the main slate. So yeah, it's you have guys like Najee Harris, who I know you like. He's the most expensive guy, but you can't trust Zeke at that price. Joe Mixon's pretty banged up. I don't know what's going on with Cordell Patterson's passing usage, receiving usage, but he's hard to spend up at. So yeah, this is a really tough slate where it's almost like these mid-price guys are kind of the sweet spot.
I mean, Cordero Patterson is not hard to spend up at. I would still spend up on him. I mean, he's fine in the end zone. Like, he's the red zone guy. He's the only guy that they can use in the red zone. Like, it's just like now the value is he's not as much of a smash as he was like earlier in the year, exactly. But yeah, I still think he's fairly priced at 6,900. You know, I still think that's a value there. Out of all the guys under 7K, he's averaging the most points. So
he's kind of like morphed into the Mike Davis role. Mike Davis is kind of taking over the Cordell Patterson role. It's been really weird to watch just how they kind of use these Falcons backs this year.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, they just can't give Davis carries, right? Like it's just not working. So it's like, at least there's some deception there when Patterson is the guy, you know, with the threat of, you know, them calling a pass play, and then he's just kind of the traditional back now. So yeah, I have noticed that too. That's interesting. Okay, let's go to the prop.
Well, I just kind of like teed it up here. It's Cordell Patterson, his receiving yard this week. Where do you have it? Because right now, you know, he's fallen off the map kind of bit. He hasn't topped 30 yards since week 9. Yeah. So we've seen him a bit of a dip. I'm projecting him at 26.5. Are you over or under that?
Yeah, I'm a little over. I'm around 30. I think that he does get back into a bigger role receiving wise, because you're facing the San Francisco 49ers, and they do a couple of things really well. Number one, they take away the tight end. So that's tough for Kyle Pitts. San Francisco is second in DVOA against tight ends. And then San Francisco also excellent at stopping the run. So they are third in DVOA against the run. So they're right up there with, you know, those New Orleans and Tampa Bay type run defenses this year. So I think that they're going to have to look to get Patterson more involved in the pass game out of necessity this week. So I think this is a week where he goes over. All right, let's get to wide receiver, top 5.
Pretty straightforward this week. I got Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and Chris Godwin.
I got Kupp, Adams, Jefferson in the 3rd spot ahead of Hill, and then Deebo Samuel in that 5th spot. Godwin is 6. He's right there as well. Like Godwin in this matchup, you know, Mike Evans usually struggles against New Orleans. That's the one thing. So not going to be a week where I'm smashing the over on Mike Evans prop again. Fine. Although he might still get it. It's still like right around 60, which is still probably low for him, but he doesn't usually get there against New Orleans. But yeah, Deebo, I think whether he does it as a running back or a receiver, I mean, this guy, he's just so good. I mean, every play, every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to score. I mean, if he gets on that edge, it doesn't matter who it is. And then he can make these tough catches over the middle. Like, it's hard not to get Deebo in here. And then Jamar Chase obviously is right there as well. You know, again, like the matchup against Denver.
Yeah, Deebo is just fascinating. He's giving me my player prop, so we can wait to really dive in at the end. But, you know, he's getting 6 to 8 carries for a ton of yards and touchdowns and 1 catch each of the past 3 games. So it's almost like looking at a Miles Sanders box score, but with touchdowns. Like, very weird. So we're gonna have to break it down later on in my player prop, because he is fascinating to me right now.
Yeah, he's become a running back.
Yeah.
Okay. DFS cheat codes at wide receiver.
So like I said, I Brandon Cooks at 5,800. You cannot go wrong with him there. He's coming off a massive 8 catch, 101 yard game last week. I've said, you know, once Davis Mills took over for Tyrod Taylor, that he's a first read kind of guy. He led all of NCAA football last season in first read. So it would make sense that Cooks would kind of go off with Mills under center. So I think they keep that up this week. So yes, I can get behind some Mills Cook stacks for sure. Maybe when we make our DraftKings lineup, we could do that. I could totally get behind that. And then Cole Beasley, just at 4,900, he's way too cheap. You know, he has a high floor, and he had a rough stretch between weeks 10 and 13. He was dealing with like a rib injury. And of course we had the windy game. But he bounced back with a 9 catch, 64 yard game last week. Manny Sanders could be banged up. So we could see an extra target or two for Beasley. Again, this hinges on Josh Allen starting this week. I think if Allen does play and, he's limited by his toe, he might lean on guys like Beasley and Dawson Knox as sort of a safety valve as opposed to tucking and running it. So I think that could actually help a guy like Beasley out. So either way, I love him at 4,900 this week. And then Devontae Parker against the Jets. I think he's a great stacking option with Tua. He has 4 or more catches in every single game this year. He's always been kind of a guy with a low floor, but this year he's had a high floor and he always has a high ceiling. So love Devontae Parker this week against the Jets. And then, I mean, you're probably on this guy too, but Laquan Treadwell at 3,300 is just absolutely ridiculous right now. He has a really high floor for a guy that cheap. So he's definitely cash game viable against the Texans this week. I think it's 4 catches in 3 straight games. So love Treadwell at 3,300 as well.
Yeah, I played him last week. It's
Yep.
just that kind of time of year where, the pricing is kind of evened out. Now we might get some rule outs and some value to open up, but to start the week, it really doesn't. It's despite all of this COVID news, somehow we don't have like value running backs, which is kind of absurd.
So far.
Yeah, you gotta, you might have to lock in Treadwell again here this week. Some guys that I like, I'll start at the top, because I'm hoping that we get some more running back value, because I really want to play Deontay Johnson in cash games. He still doesn't have a single digit PPR game all year. So Deontay Johnson, love him every week. And then Jamar Chase. I mean, this is a smash spot for Jamar Chase. So of all the receivers active, that will be active in the NFL right now, that have at least 9 targets on the year, and Chase obviously has a lot more than that, but Chase leads them all in yards per route run versus man coverage at 3.65. Denver is the only team that plays man more than half the time, and they play it at the highest rate in the league. So, I mean, can they switch it up? Maybe, but Chase is more likely to see man coverage this week than he really has been in any other week of the season. So this is just a monster spot for Chase, even coming off a huge game last week. So I really like him at 7,100. He's another guy. It's hard to find truly bad games. Even when he's had some low yardage games, he's kind of saved it with a touchdown. So he only has 2 single digit games on DraftKings. One of them was 9.9. So he's a 1/10 of a point away. And then he has one true one where he just had 3 catches for 39 yards against Pittsburgh. But love Chase. So Chase and Johnson are 2 guys that I'm really hoping that I can make work in cash games one way or another. Jamison Crowder, he's running a route in over 90% of the dropbacks with Corey Davis and Elijah Moore out. And now Crowder really becomes that alpha dog in that Jets passing game, because in terms of the other guys he's running routes against, I mean, it's Mims and Keelan Cole and probably Jeff Smith and Berrios. So, and not really nothing at tight end. So it's a spot where Crowder could catch 8 to 10 balls if the Jets are in a trailing game script. So he's a good stacking option if you're bringing it back with Tua, like Tua and a stack with one of his receivers. Crowder on the other side, I really like that. Nico Collins, I know you like the first read for Davis Mills, but I think Collins we've been kind of waiting for him to break out.
Yep.
And I think he's trending upward and toward that, especially in terms of his routes run. He cleared 80%, so he's more in that true number 2 wide receiver range now. And Texans are dealing with a lot of injuries at wide receiver. Davion Davis, another guy that they were playing earlier in the year, he just was lost with a season-ending injury. Chris Moore was a healthy scratch, so they're obviously not really interested in him too much. They signed Philip Dorsett. They still got Conley, who's not really, he doesn't really draw many targets anyway. So it's a good spot for a guy like Nico Collins. And you could even double stack him with Davis Mills and Brandon Cooks because he's cheap enough to do it. And then one more guy I'll mention, you mentioned Beasley, I'll mention Gabe Davis, and that's obviously if Josh Allen starts, but Gabe Davis, I do expect him to start and play upwards of 80% of the snaps. I think Sanders is probably going to miss at least 1 week. It's not official, I don't think, but he's trending toward that direction. And as I mentioned earlier on another pod, Davis was already kind of going in for Sanders at key spots because Sanders has really been struggling lately. So Davis is like that red zone guy. He's that deep guy. And Allen, yeah, like you said, if he's hurt, he's less tucking and running and just more throwing, which is always going to benefit the receivers. So, maybe even Stephon Diggs deserves to be back up there this week. I know we always kind of joke about it.
Such a Diggs hater.
No, I'm not though. It's just I love Diggs. It's just that there's usually just one other guy that like I'd rather have fifth, like whether it's Jamar Chase or Debo Samuel. I mean, you can't really.
Do you have Diggs right? Do you have Diggs 6? I have him 6.
I
you just missed it, so you didn't get to bag on my top 5 again.
Yeah. Let's see. Where do I have Diggs? I have Diggs a little, but I have Diggs 8th, but that's because I really like I have Deontay 6th. I have Godwin 7th. And then Chase, I have actually Chase behind Diggs. I got to move Chase up ahead of Diggs, actually. It's just tough to project Diggs routes run at a given week, too, because it's like he has one game where he runs like around like 97% of the snaps, and then he drops down into like the mid 80s again. So it's been odd with him. But love Stephon Diggs, just not as a top 5, more like a top 8. But let's get into the prop.
So I hinted at it, but it's Debo Samuel. How many rushing yards are you projecting him for? And is it over under 35.5 against the Falcons?
I do have an under. I am using his season long carry percentage, which is he's got 11% of the of the design runs for San Francisco. So I'm using that, and the reason I'm using it is because as of now, I'm projecting Elijah Mitchell to be back. Now, if Mitchell is not back, I would up that. I would probably double that, and I'd be closer to 40 yards. So then I'd be going over. So really, it's just that early in the week, I'm not going to rule Mitchell out just yet, and that's kind of what's been the issue. It's that with Mitchell out and Ayuk coming on, it's like not like San Francisco has Kittle and they have Ayuk, so they don't need like a third wide receiver really. So they just put Debo in a backfield for a lot of these snaps, and then he's like a decoy when he's out wide. So it's kind of, a little Cordero Patterson action here. It's really fascinating because you have Patterson on one side and Debo on the other. So I'm going to be watching this game. Like this is going to be a very interesting game just from a schematic standpoint. Two pretty good offensive schemers in Arthur Smith and Kyle Shanahan. But is that like, are you projecting Mitchell just as out to start the week?
No, I'm projecting Mitchell in. How would you explain weeks 10 and 12 where Mitchell had 27 rush attempts and Debo still crushed this number? Like, how do you even explain that? He only needs like, first of all, what's your rushing yards per attempt for him right now? Mine's like 7. It's absurd.
Yeah, 7 even.
Yeah. So he doesn't need that many carries to get here. And he had 5 rush attempts week 10 when Elijah Mitchell had 27 rushing attempts. And then he had 6 in week 12 when Elijah Mitchell had 27 rushing attempts. So even when Mitchell's active, they're still getting Debo the ball out of the backfield. So, and I was texting you before the game, like I said, hey, they have like Debo Samuel rushing prop at 30.5. Obviously we stayed away from that, but it just seemed absurd. But right now that seems like it's a little bit too low. So I have it 35.5. This is just an easy matchup. So he probably only needs a handful of carries to go over this, but I'm just curious, like what's going on with his receiving uses? What are you projecting for his receptions right now?
Let's see.
Because like I said, he's only had 1 catch in 3 straight games, but he's been able to make up for that on the ground, of course.
I'm at 5 catches. I still am at 5.
5 catches.
I'm using the season-long numbers because it's like, yes, his rushing usage has trended upwards, and maybe I'll adjust it to kind of just count the games since Ayuk has been kind of running, operating as that number 1 receiver, which is probably the last 7 games or so, 7-8 games. Debo had 0 rushes. Like the last 4, he's had 5 or more rushes, but the 3 before that, he had 0 rushes. And then and the 4 before that, he had either 1 or 2. So it's, it's kind of been going in these 4-game increments, 3-4-game increments. So I still kind of trending toward the season-long outlook. Either way, he's like, it makes him a top 5 receiver. Yeah. Like whether it's going to be, it's all-purpose yards. Like remember, this guy was like leading the league in receiving yardage at one point. So it's crazy that he's getting like 1 catch.
Well, you know why, right? A huge reason is George Kittle just going bananas right now. I mean, he's an absolute beast. So if Jimmy G targets someone other than George Kittle, it's probably going to be Debo Samuel. So watch out if Debo's getting these 5 or 6 carries and getting the 4 to 6 receptions. I mean, he's like pushing, he's top 3 for sure. I remember you had him in your top 2 or whatever a couple weeks ago. He'll be back in that range.
Oh yeah, he's easily. I don't think he's fallen out of my top 5, like period.
Right.
Like since like the early part of the year. But it's crazy. 3 straight 1-catch games for Debo.
Yep.
He is still 4th in the league in receiving yards per game.
Yeah.
85.7 after 3 straight 1-catch games. Like, that is absurd.
It's insane.
Yeah.
He's really fun to project right now. I'll just put it that way.
Very fun to play. Like, you don't need,
Yeah,
it's actually
fun to
not
watch
fun to
too.
project because it's like, I don't know whether to give him rushing or receiving, but the point is you put him in your lineup and he's getting you points. That's what's kind of going on. All right, let's go to tight end, top 5 for week 15.
So I have Travis Kelce and then George Kittle, and this has to be the closest gap between 1 and 2 in quite some time. I have Kittle just 0.2 points under Travis Kelce. Then it's Gronk, then it's Mark Andrews, and then it's Dawson Knox.
I have Kelce. Gronk and Kittle are actually tied for me.
Wow,
so,
you must love Gronk this week.
No, I love Tom Brady. We've been over this. We've been over this.
Sorry.
And yeah, I mean, realistically, Gronk and Kittle, their routes run per dropback has really increased. They're in the mid 80s. Kittle even pushed 90s in the last few games. So it really comes down to the fact that like Brady's touchdown projection is higher and Brady's yardage projection is higher. So, that's what kind of pulls Gronk even there, even though Kittle, he has had some huge games. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them.
Yeah.
We'll see, as the week progresses, fiddle things, maybe one of them pops, a 1/10 of a point higher, but right now I both have them at 12.5 half PPR points. And then Kelce, 0.3 of a point ahead of those guys. And I almost feel like want to knock Kelce down to 3rd. Like Gronk and Kittle have both been so good, and Kelsey's been a little touch and go lately.
You're not wrong.
Right. Yeah. It's because of Mahomes. Like, it's like now that whole Mahomes, like usually Kelce was the auto number 1, even in a tough matchup or whatever it was, just because Mahomes was you're projecting Mahomes for like 300 yards and 2.5 touchdowns. And now that's not necessarily the case. So, I mean, hey, maybe it is warranted to knock him down a bit to 3rd. Mark Andrews has also been playing real well. So yeah, I have Kelce, Gronk, Kittle, Andrews, and then Dallas Goedert is in 5th place. Again, Knox is down a little bit more just because I'm not projecting, Josh Allen for like his full 100% yet. So, kind of, and then that would obviously impact how many points I project the Bills to score as well. So that's why I have Knox a little lower, but love the usage for Knox. He's running a route pretty much every drop back. So he's right there as well. And then, looks like Waller is probably going to miss. So right now I still have him at 6th, but looks like he's going to miss another game. I don't think that means we play Foster Moreau, but just to note that if Waller was active, he would probably jump Goddard at least into that top 5. Mm-hmm. All right, DFS cheat codes.
So I think Dawson Knox at 5,100 makes sense. Again, this all hinges on Josh Allen playing this week. But again, if Josh Allen's playing and he's not running as much, it's going to be more targets to go around. I just think Knox is sneaky at 5,100 with all the really, no-brainer plays up top. I think Knox is going to be overlooked this week. You can't go wrong with anybody above him, though, of course. And then I think Tyler Higbee's mispriced at 4K. Looks like he had a false positive for missing Monday Night Football, so he should be cleared to play. And with Odell out of the lineup, I think they might change things around where Van Jefferson takes over more of the deep role, and Tyler Higbee's competing with Ben Skronik over the middle, and of course Cooper Kupp. But either way, I think Higbee is pretty good at 4K if you want to spend down at tight end. And then you mentioned him earlier in the pod. I thought it was really smart to talk about CJ Uzomah, who's been playing really well against man. Whenever the Bengals play a man-heavy team, Uzomah and Jamar Chase, like you said, are in play. And if they play a zone-heavy team, that's when you pivot to T. Higgins. So I think Uzomah has the the potential for a ceiling game here. So I like him at 3,100. And then our boy Brevin Jordan at 2,800. If you want to go for upside, go for some sneaky Texan stacks. I do like Brevin Jordan at 2,800. He looked really good again last week. Had a good game with Davis Mills. So I think he's sneaky at 2,800.
Oh, I'm all in. Like even last week, I wrote up in my Saturday matchups column, like, Davis Mills, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Brevin Jordan. Like I'm playing these guys this week.
Yeah, I told you.
I'm doing it again.
I said last week, you're a week early. I love your call back in week 13, and he kind of had a dud, but I was like, I am all aboard that Brevin Jordan train. So
Yeah.
let's keep it going. He's got to be over 3K by now, so he's still a steal if he's under 3K.
Yeah, and I love a tight end number 9, like it's just like a refreshing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a big fan of these number changes, but something about seeing like a tight end number 9 is it's just interesting. So
Kyle Pitts is number 8, right?
I haven't seen Kyle Pitts in a few weeks, so
I think he's a single digit guy, and it just
Yeah,
like you said, it looks so badass. So yeah, Brevin Jordan has the single digit vibe going, which bumps him in my model.
Yeah, no, I like that call. Like I'm going all in on Davis Mills. This is gonna end so poorly.
Yeah.
But I do like Dallas Goedert in the as I mentioned, he's a top 5 tight end for me. Obviously had the big game last game, 5,300. Love the price here. Probably would even play him a little bit over Knox if depending on what happens with Allen. But even if Allen starts, I think I still like Goddard in this matchup. I just think it's an easier defense to produce against. Mike Gesicki, at 5K now. Devontae Parker back does probably knock him down a little bit, but I still think a guy like Gesicki is a guy who could catch like 7-8 balls. It's the Jets here. Dalton Schultz is another one. Dak has been a little uneven lately, but I still think Dalton Schultz at 4,900 is too cheap. He's still a top 10 tight end for me as well. And then on the low end, you already mentioned Jordan, so I won't go into him, but and Usoma, who I also like. Another one, I think you briefly mentioned him on the waivers pod, is James O'Shaughnessy. And the more I do look at it, the more he probably is a guy who like you can pick up if you're in desperate need of like a tight end streamer. But he's going against this Houston team that one of the worst in the league at defending the tight end position, even though they've been good against the pass. Houston is 29th in DVOA against the tight end position. So that's bottom 4. So this could be a game for O'Shaughnessy. And another reason I like him is we mentioned earlier that we will probably be forced at this point to kind of use Laquan Treadwell in cash games again. And I think Treadwell, now that he's kind of, been consistent for 3 games in a row, might start getting a little bit more rostership in tournaments. So I like O'Shaughnessy as a pivot here. O'Shaughnessy's 100 cheaper. So I like him as a pivot off Treadwell here at tight end. All right, what are we doing for the prop?
Yeah, we're gonna have to go with George Kittle here. I think it's just fascinating, like how much recent data do you factor in for a guy like Kittle? So right now I have his projection at 64.5 receiving yards. Are you over under that?
Ooh, I'm right in line with that. My mean is 69. So
nice.
Yeah, man, actually nice. I'll go over just because it's George Kittle. Like why go under? But no, I think that's the right line. Again, I have him right in line with Gronk and 0.3 of a point behind Kelsey. So there's a case to be made for Kittle as a number 1 tight end this week. So yep. I don't think you can go wrong with him. I don't think you can go too wrong with Mark Andrews. But I think Kelsey, Gronk and Kittle just really stand out. Especially, if Debo is going to continue to be used, kind of more as like this running back and decoy at receiver, that's the guy who's really benefiting. It's Kittle. Ayuk has been running the same amount of routes, week in, week out. His target share has obviously gone up, but Kittle's really the guy that, he's going to be that guy making the tough catches over the middle of the field and doing all that stuff. So, yeah, nothing negative I could say about George Kittle here, but it's in tournaments. I mean, with Gronk off the slate, Kittle probably, and Kelsey off the slate, Kittle probably even, do you think at his price at 7,500, he's still going to be the highest owned tight end?
Yeah, it's tough to say because like you said, there aren't many running backs you can really spend down on. So I think it depends on if we get any news later in the week where a big value play at running back pops up, it might bump up his rostership. But right now, I don't think he's going to be too highly rostered just because he's so expensive. He's probably worth every dollar. But just like you said, given the top options not on the slate, I think he probably is worth the price if you're just going for pure ceiling. Because Mark Andrews, he's just $1,000 cheaper, but I have him like close to 3.5, 4 points less. So there is a big drop off.
Yeah.
So that's why I do think people will spend up, because if you're going to spend up at tight end, why not just go all the way to Kittle?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not Kittle, it would probably be someone in that Goddard to Knox range. Like one of those two guys, I would think would garner the most. Or maybe even Gesicki, given it's the Jets match, and he's cheap, the cheapest one. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think Higbee, if we don't get any value, might have to just go with a guy like Higbee here. I mean, I don't. It's been so ugly, but Freiermuth is even in a tough matchup. Higbee has 10.1, 11.0, then they're just 1.3, but then 9.8. So he's kind of come close to the double digit mark in 3 of the last 4 or hit it. So yeah, it might be an ugly week. Obviously, stay tuned. I'll have the write up on actionnetwork.com, on Saturday, but yeah, it's looking like one of the tougher weeks to build lineups, at least as we record this on Tuesday. Of course, there'll be like 86 guys to be ruled out with the COVID between.
That's the over under anyway.
Right. Yeah. 86.5. Right. Let's do what we do every week on this pod, which is build DFS lineups. We do one on FanDuel, one on DraftKings. I think we had another guy ruled out. I think Jamal Williams was in one of our, I think it was in our FanDuel lineup. So can never escape it doing this early in the week, but hopefully at least we're giving you guys, some kind of ideas to how to build your lineups and the thought process each week. So let's start with DraftKings. All right, so I think I went first last week on DK, so you can start us off this week.
Let's kick it off with Brandon Cooks at 5,800. Let's just do it.
Brandon Cooks, I like it because
and then you could decide if
we doing it. It's not even a question.
You could be the one that actually puts Davis. I did not do that, but I was kind of setting that up.
I'm like way too invested in the Texans. I already bet them at plus 3.5. Like I'm just all in on Houston going against this Urban Meyer dumpster fire.
It is a dumpster fire. I don't know if I should send it back with James Robinson or Treadwell. I think for GPP, I don't know if Treadwell makes sense necessarily. So I'll go with
I think
I'll go with Justin Robinson. I just think he's probably
Justin Robinson. Who is Justin?
It was another.
That's like a Freudian slip.
I was looking at the same problem last time. I was looking at Justin Herbert as I was saying it. No joke. So yeah, James Robinson. Like I said, I think he bounces back this week. It should be a close game. So I think I'd rather have a running back in the game stack as opposed to anybody, in the passing game for the Jaguars.
Yeah, like Trevor Lawrence, even though
yeah.
You're already off that. You're like,
good. It's not possible because we have Davis.
No, yeah. I just meant in general. No, but Robinson is way too cheap.
I like Robinson way more than Trevor Lawrence. Let me just make that clear.
Justin Robinson and
that's all jacked up. Let me just make that clear. That the Trevor Lawrence cheat code earlier was just a small percentage of GPPs, but James Robinson is a core play this week for me for sure.
I like it. So we're saving some salary here. We got we got 2 guys at 5,400, and then Cooks is only 5,800. So we will be able to spend up at some spots, but for the interim, I'll go with the tight end. I'm not gonna double stack it here just because let's not get too crazy. So I'll go Dallas Goedert. Again, top 5 tight end for me. Love the matchup. So let's go with him at 5,300.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the defense here. Let's see what we're working with this week. This is the first I'm looking at it. Oh my God. Well, the Jaguars stick out, but not going with that here. I like the Bills at 3,100. Even the Packers at 3,300, but
the Bills are, and the Niners at 31 as well. Like I think that's the sweet spot. Right?
I think
Packers, Niners,
Bills at 3,100 for me. Yeah, let's go with them.
Yeah, they got to get back right on the right side of things after some brutal weeks. Facing Belichick and then Brady.
Yeah, now they get to face some sort of hybrid of Cam Newton and PJ Walker.
Yeah, they really need Sam Darnold back.
I can't tell if you're joking or not, but
I don't think I am. I don't even want to think about it any longer. Let's go back to the well. We put him in our lineup last week and he paid off. Let's go right back to Jamar Chase. That 3.7 yards per route run against man coverage just got me like very, very excited about this week for Jamar Chase.
Love it. And I think I allowed that when I had that pivot off of one of the play. Like I saw it could work. love Jamar Chase even more this week than last week. So love that play. So we have 5,900 left. That's a good amount.
59.66. Yeah, we already have a defense out of the way. So
yeah, I'm not gonna mess with running back. I'm going receiver here. And we don't have any Bills player. Okay, I'm
yeah,
gonna.
no, we have the Bills D though. We have the Bills
Ooh.
D. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I'm gonna force in Beasley.
All right. 4,900. So that gives us 6,500 to spend on a running back and a flex. I'm gonna go ahead and do it with Najee. Then he's the top 5 running back for me. He's the most expensive on the slate, so maybe the rostership isn't like super high, but I just think that Tennessee's pass defense I think has come on a bit. I think you're gonna want to run the ball. It's gonna be a low scoring game. He's got the long rest, so maybe he can get back to that true like 100% carry workload here. So yeah. Give me Najee at home, and this is also a rah-rah spot. So Pittsburgh at home is an underdog, rah-rah Tomlin spot. So don't think just because they're underdogs that this is going to be like a negative game score. Though it doesn't matter for Harris, but I think it could be an interesting kind of game script that doesn't go as people expect. So yeah, let's go Najee. That leaves 5,200 for the flex.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I do like the Steelers. It's early in the week. There's so many issues going around with the league, and I don't like locking bets early in the week, but I do like the Steelers plus 1.5. So love the Najee call. So 5,200. What sort of wide receivers?
Amon-Ra St. Brown we would leave nothing on the table though. He's exactly 5,200.
Oh man, Devontae Parker. I wish I used them earlier at 4,300.
Could it just be
way too much cash.
You could put him in for Beasley and then switch your flex up if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. Yep. Because I like Parker's ceiling even more. So let me put Parker in and then see what we got.
So now we're up to 5,800.
So 5,800.
That actually
much better.
opens things up a little more.
Yeah, much better.
So now you got like Russell Gage at receiver. You got Van Jefferson Jr. at 5,600. Michael Gallup at 55 could be a bounce back for him.
Yeah, I think
Julio.
Julio, and
that's a correlation play.
Najee, I do like the Julio call. I was gonna say Gallup, Julio, or Van Jefferson. Like I said, if Odell's out, he's gonna be that deep threat. So if you're setting this lineup, you can go any of those 3. But let's get sneaky here. I like the correlation with Najee. Let's go with Julio. We could have a Mount St. Julio eruption game, finally.
Hopefully, I wouldn't
put a ton of money on that, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's just, I just need him to get I feel like I don't want him to kind of go the way of like AJ Green. It's like these guys just kind of disappear.
What are you talking? AJ Green tore it up last night, but I know.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at his numbers over the past 2 seasons combined, it's
bad.
Okay, so we have Davis Mills at quarterback, 5,400 at Jacksonville. Najee Harris, 7,800 against Tennessee at running back, along with James Robinson, 5,400 against Houston. Our receivers, Brandon Cooks, 5,800 at Jacksonville. Jamar Chase, 7,100 at Denver. And Devontae Parker, 4,300 at home against the Jets. Our tight end is Dallas Goedert at 5,300 at home against Washington. And then we have Julio going to Pittsburgh in the flex spot at 5,400. So with the Bills defense at 3,100, hosting Carolina as double-digit favorites. So we have a pretty balanced lineup. I like it. Nobody over 7,800, and then none of our non-defensive plays are under 4,300. So we're not going super studs and scrubs. I think this is kind of how you want to build tournament lineups most weeks. Is kind of get a lot of those middle tier guys in there. You're also gonna usually get lower rostership combined for your whole lineup when you're doing that. So I like the build of this. And as you mentioned, there's a bunch of options you could kind of swap out with the flex and things like that. And there's even enough, you could pivot from Chase to like a guy like Deontay too for 400 more. There's actually 400 left over. So there's a lot of options here. All right, so let's jump over to FanDuel now, and I will start us off, and I'll start us off at receiver. Let's go with Van Jefferson Jr. here. Like him, in this spot. I think that he's going to be their kind of go-to downfield guy either way. I mean, Beckham there or not, he seems to catch a long touchdown. It's a matchup against Seattle that, Seattle has been pretty good against wide receivers. So maybe people won't be on it because you see that, first ranking for Seattle against wide receivers, which I always like. But in a matchup like this, like the Rams, we know what they're going to do. They're going to target their, guys and like pretty much all the time. They don't really sub out a lot of guys. Seattle's still 22nd in DVOA versus number 2 receivers and 16th versus non-number 1 and number 2 guys. So they haven't been that great, overall, even though the fantasy numbers look decent. So let's go Van Jefferson here at 6,200.
Yeah, I love it. And especially on a half PPR site like FanDuel, a site like this, we're looking for more, long touchdowns would be great. So Van Jefferson is a great play. I'm going to stick at receiver and go Deontay Johnson. He's 7,200 on FanDuel. That's too cheap. Love, obviously he's a high floor guy, but he's still has a massive ceiling. So let's go with Deontay.
Yeah, love it every week. I mean, this guy just does not disappoint. So never gonna get a argument from me. Let's go with at running back. I'm gonna lock in my guy Cordero Patterson. Another guy in somewhat of a tough matchup, but 7K. He's 69 on DraftKings, so 10K more cap, and he's only 100 more expensive. Just a guy who could go off for multiple touchdowns every week and just kind of. It's like there's always unlimited upside with Cordero Patterson, and he's still priced pretty fairly for a guy with his kind of upside. So yeah, let's go with CP at 7K. That means we got 6,600 average for 6 more guys.
Love Patterson because I was considering using Jimmy G at QB, so I like the game stack. So let's go with Jimmy G at QB. He's typically a guy I don't think has a high ceiling, but we just spent 10 minutes each talking about Deebo Samuel and George Kittle's massive upside. So let's tap into that here with Jimmy G.
All right. So then I'm going to go Kittle because, as you mentioned, there's a chance Deebo plays more as the running back here. He hasn't caught as many. So I think that the real correlation here is you got to play Ayuk or Kittle, at least until we know Mitchell is confirmed in, but Kittle either way. So
yeah,
7,800 for Kittle, pretty doable considering it's only 300 more than on DraftKings despite the higher cap. So that gives us 6,275 average for a running back, a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense.
I'm taking a look at defense right now, and it's pretty disgusting.
I mean, I can pick a defense. You pick
okay,
one
yeah,
or the other one, yeah.
I was just looking to see, but yeah, you can have the honors of that. So we have 6,200 defense. I just think he sticks out at FanDuel right now. 5,900. It's Devontae Freeman. I think he's gonna be overlooked, but he's the Ravens' workhorse back. So I like him, especially on a half PPR site. But like I said, he's had 5 catches in the past 2 games. But I like Freeman's upside, and he should be overlooked here. So like him at 5,900.
Oh yeah, he might have to be in cash game lineups on FanDuel at that price.
Oh yeah, for sure, cash games. Yep.
Go Titans here. Titans. I mean, 21 points against the Jaguars, and then they've had a couple of rough games or kind of so-so games and one really bad one against New England. So they had 21 points in their last game, and they've had double digits in 5 of their last 9. So they've had 12 or more in 5 of their last 9. I think they're really rounding into shape. They're really physical defense that, even though I do like the Steelers, it's a big spot. I still think probably more of a defensive game. I think the Steelers defense, kind of like the Ravens game, I think the Steelers defense is going to have to step up. I wouldn't worry about the Titans defense. So I think there's a lot of upside with the Titans at 4,100, especially after what we saw from the Steelers just in that first half against Minnesota. So yeah, let's go Titans at 4,100 and hope, like you said, they get a defensive touchdown or 2 that just increases the need for Deontay to catch passes.
It'll work. And somehow the Steelers cover the spread because I'm assuming we're both going to be on them.
Oh yeah, they'll probably win the game. Yeah, like every time it's like Minnesota and Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's why it was like a Twilight Zone when they played each other last week. I was like, like these are both teams that every time you think they're dead, then they win a game, and then it's like they're just hanging on for dear life, and then they just lose miserably the next week. So, I think this week is gonna be like a Steelers, Bengals, Texans kind of week for me in terms of betting. But yeah, I digress. Let's we got 2 guys left, 75-50, so pretty good salary here, wide receiver and flex.
Yeah, so I was gonna go with Gallup here because I was considering him as our flex on the DK lineup, but that would leave you with 9,200. That's way too much left over. I'm basically forcing you to take Cooper Kupp, which isn't the worst thing, but I think I'm gonna spend up here and get CD Lamb at 7,400. I
Oh.
mentioned that I liked the Cowboys passing attack this week because Pollard and Zeke are banged up. So why not just spend up and get the number one receiver in CD Lamb?
Yeah, he's a top 10 receiver for me
Yeah.
this week, and kind of overlooked. It's been a little bit inconsistent for that whole passing game. So I don't think his rostership will be too high here. All right, that leaves me with 7,700. Geez, we could go Jamar Chase again. He's at
Yeah,
7,500.
yeah. You know
I
what?
kind
You're
of want to
allowed.
do it.
We always have one overlap player, and if there's anybody that deserves that this week in a GPP, it's got to be Chase, right?
Yes, because then also, I mean, just comparing him to some of the other options and kind of underscoring why this is a pretty tough slate. The other options would have been Hopkins, who we don't know
Why
what's
not
going on with
play?
him, right?
Yeah.
Aaron Jones, who's losing carries to Dylan every week. Dylan, who's still like in a committee. Mark Andrews, who might not have his quarterback. You already had Lamb. Then you had like Tyler Lockett, Saquon Barkley, who's probably overpriced. So there's just not that many options, especially of guys we didn't pick already, like Deontay and Lamb. And so, yeah, I think Chase has to be it here at 7,500. That gives us Jimmy G, 6,700 at quarterback, Cordero Patterson, 7K at running back, along with Devontae Freeman at 5,900. That's probably a cash game play as well. Then the wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb at 7,400 against the Giants, Deontay Johnson at 7,200 against the Titans, and Van Jefferson Jr. 6,200 against the Seahawks. George Kittle 7,800 at tight end. Jamar Chase 7,500 in the flex at Denver, with the Titans at 4,100 going to Pittsburgh. So 200 left over. Really like that price for Jimmy G. I mean, that is 6,700. You don't usually get a quarterback on FanDuel at that price. I mean, this lineup in a lot of ways actually is borderline cash game playable, just because we got to save so much on Jimmy G. Because I mean, Patterson's a high floor guy. Freeman's just too cheap. Chase, he's cash viable pretty much every week. Maybe you kind of switch out CeeDee Lamb or somebody like that, and Jefferson, and try to find like a higher floor combination of guys. But yes, that's the lineup. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Fantasy Flex, presented by Prize Picks. You can find Sean on Twitter at @_oddsmaker. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Raybon. You can find us at those same handles in the free award-winning Action Network app. Be sure to check actionnetwork.com for our fantasy football rankings, projections, and content, and fantasylabs.com for our DFS content, tools, and models. Until next time, let's get this money.